Hi, my name is Aisha, and I wanted to tell you my story. I decided to write a book about my mother, Ansa Chowdhury, who was waiting for a kidney transplant. My father came to the UK with his family, his father and mother and siblings, after the partition between India and Pakistan. So India was once one country, and then after the partition, it was then split into several countries, so India and Pakistan, and then later Bangladesh. Um, my dad's family went on a ship, a passenger ship from Pakistan, uh, because even though he was originally born in India, where he then lived after the partition was then the new Pakistan. So after that, when he was around 11 years old, his family decided to emigrate to the United Kingdom, to England, and they took a ship as passengers and were one of the last passenger ships to pass through the Suez Canal before bombardments began. And then it was blocked and you couldn't pass through it. And they didn't even know, because he was 11 and nobody announced really anything on the ship at the time, that there was a conflict going on with a few countries. And so when they moved through the Suez Canal, they didn't know behind them that they were pretty much one of the last ships to pass through it and then to arrive in England on the 5th of November, Guy Fawkes night. My dad said he remembered lots of smoke from all the fireworks that were being let off on Guy Fawkes night, because Guy Fawkes is a day that's used in England to remember an attempt to blow up the Houses of Parliament. Anyway, that's where my father then lived and grew up from the age of 11 onwards, back in the 50s. My mother was also born in Pakistan, but she, with her family, after the partition and the conflict going on between India and Pakistan, her family moved to Kuwait in the Middle East. And both families knew each other. And later in life, my parents got together and were married. So my mother moved to the United Kingdom, to England, and lived with my dad, and then had us 4 children. Everything was smooth, and my dad worked as a mechanical engineer at London Heathrow Airport, and my mother was raising us kids until both of my parents decided they wanted to run their own corner shop, because South Asians like to be independent and do what they can to raise their children in the best way possible. So for my parents, my dad and my mum opened up a corner shop in Reading, Berkshire. And then when I was around 15, my mother experienced from her family what it was like for them to go through the Gulf War, which is what happened when Iraq was invaded. So first, my mum's parents experienced the conflict going on in India and Pakistan, and then second, my mother's family experienced the war in Iraq, because her family was living in Kuwait. So that's a lot to go through. But when that was going on, my mother wasn't feeling well and needed, as it turned out, a kidney transplant. I didn't know when I was 14 that I wanted to write a book that was going to turn out to be a book about my mum. I knew I wanted to write a book, but I didn't know what it was going to be about. And as it turns out, this many years later, here I am, and I've written my book telling the story of my mother waiting for a kidney transplant. It's called Family Matters. And my mother was on dialysis for 10 years, waiting for a kidney transplant, having dialysis about 3 or 4 times a week, and also started off doing it at home until she wasn't able to anymore and then had to go into hospital. So I write a lot about our stories, what it was like being children at home in an Asian intercultural household, because I grew up in a house where I could hear Arabic being spoken by my mother and her family, and then Urdu and Punjabi with my mother and my father's families, and me with my siblings speaking English. So it was a very intercultural, very energetic, lively, bubbly household. And so I wanted to tell the story because even though my mother needed a kidney transplant, we tried to keep our morale up for her and for ourselves as much as possible. And so I tell the story of what it was like as a British Asian teenager growing up, waiting for our mother to have or find a kidney. As it turns out, you'll read, for those of you who read the book, you'll read that it wasn't an easy journey to go on because my mother came from a South Asian background, we all did. And lots of campaigning and great work is being done by the healthcare sector, the NHS, lots of research is being done. But as it happens, this many years later, the number of people who are available for being able to donate a kidney is still not really high enough, but the number of people who need an organ transplant is even higher than what it was when my mother needed one. So I'm trying to raise awareness. I'm telling my story in this book called Family Matters, because I want people to talk to their families about what their wishes are, about when they die, with what they want to have happen with their organs. No, I'm not forcing anyone to do anything. It's obviously a matter for every individual on their own. I just want people to talk about it, to say what their wishes are, because we have an opt-out system in the UK, which means that you're on the organ donor register automatically, but there's a soft opt-out, which means your family will always be asked what their wishes are regarding whether or not they consent to you, to your organs being donated. So the best thing is, in my opinion, if you talk to your family and tell them what you want, then they won't feel a very heavy burden of having to decide what they think you might have wanted when the time comes, because we all come into the world with nothing and we all leave with nothing, but the bit in between is called life, and it's what you want to have happen with you when your life ends that I would like people to think about and tell and talk to their families about. And by that, when I say, what do you want to have happen when you die with your organs, it's possible to help save other people's lives who are waiting for an organ. Because actually, even when you die, your organs can go into someone else who's waiting for an organ, and they can have their life saved and prolonged so they can live a happier, different kind of life with their family. And what a wonderful gift that is, to give the gift of life to someone else after you've died. The other thing that's really amazing is the idea of living donation. We all tried to be live, living donors for my mother, because the best match is from someone from your own background. As it turned out, we were not a match. But what's amazing with kidneys is we have two of them, but you only need one to survive. So it's actually possible to live a perfectly good, normal, healthy life, even after donating a kidney to someone else while you're alive. There's something to think about. So there you go. That's why I wrote the book. There's obviously a lot more reasons, but I just wanted to introduce myself to say I've written Family Matters. There's a lot about love, families, humour, emotions, lots of stories, and I think it's a good read. So there we go. My name is Aisha and I wrote Family Matters. This is my little introduction to you about my book.